lost all my ambition, 'cause I know I'd never try that today. Looking way back now, between the jump and the ground, was the only time that I could ever say. You can stand there on the ground and let your fear keep you down, or you can pick up all your courage and fly. When it comes down to the end, are you living, my friend, or just trying your best not to die?
You can stand there on the ground and let your fear keep you down, or you can pick up all your courage and fly. I love that line, but not just because it's a powerful line. This song will forever remind me of the 6 months of my life that changed my perspective on how I view myself as well as the world around me. During the spring semester of 2015, I studied abroad in Madrid, Spain. As I sat staring out the window of a bus on a cold January day in Wisconsin on my way to the Chicago O'Hare Airport, that song, Trying Not to Die, came on my iPod. As the singer sang the chorus, I felt myself getting emotional. I was leaving my home in Madison for the first time to endure a 9-hour flight to Madrid. This was the first time that I'd lived outside of Wisconsin for any extended period of time before, and I was crazy nervous to leave behind my family, my friends, and my girlfriend. How was I going to survive in a country by myself and rely solely on my Spanish skills for 6 months? But I'm getting ahead of myself. In order to understand this story, it is necessary to turn back the clock to 7th grade. I distinctly remember my first day of Spanish class in 7th grade, and it started with walking into a room blasting Oye El Boom, a Spanish pop song from David Bisbal, one of the biggest stars in Spain. That first year of Spanish classes was the first time that I was exposed to a world language, and by the end of the year, I had fallen in love with learning Spanish. As I got older, I began studying French as well, and I began to realize that learning and speaking world languages was a huge part of who I was. It was and still is an important part of who I am as a person. But for me, the desire to teach came before my love of Spanish. I had always contemplated teaching as a career. As a kid, my sister and I would play school in our basement. Indeed, I believe that teaching was, in a way, ingrained in my being. My mom was a French teacher, and she began educating my sister and me from an early age. She instilled upon me the values of education. It was in high school that my passion for Spanish and my desire to teach collided, and I began to plan my path towards becoming a world language teacher. And I wasn't the only one who thought I would be a good teacher. I was voted most likely to become a teacher my senior year of high school. So, after I graduated and got my acceptance letter to the University of Wisconsin, I began to chart a path that would lead me to becoming a world language teacher. On that path was a requirement that I wasn't, at least initially, excited to complete, an immersion experience. But nonetheless, I planned a semester abroad in my junior year. As I was researching programs, I stumbled across the WIP program in Madrid and realized it was a perfect program for me. It had everything I wanted: the opportunity to stay with a host family, a great educational facility, and it was in Spain, which meant I could make a trip up to France to practice my French as well.
No soy poeta, pero son tus labios, son lo que me inspiran a escribir mis temas, lo que yo te canto, porque tú me guías.
So that, along with a long 9-hour flight involving absolutely no sleep, is what brought me here, to Madrid, Spain, one of the most amazing cities in the world, although I am a little biased, I suppose. While I was there, I immersed myself completely in Spanish, but I found that I was also immersing myself in the culture. I began to adopt many Spanish habits, such as eating late and embracing the siestas, but I found that the longer I spent in Spain, the more complex I found Spanish culture to be. I learned much more about Spanish sports, politics, and history, and began to understand their way of life and their way of thinking. Spending 6 months in Spain really opened my eyes to how different and distinct cultures are around the world. I also began reflecting more deeply on my own culture. I found that I was viewed through the eyes of many Spaniards as being simply estadounidense, or American. I felt as though numerous times there were Spaniards that treated me and others in my study abroad program differently because we were clearly foreigners. This was the first time in my life that I felt like the other. In some instances, people would even try to take advantage of my American friends and me. I recall one moment in particular when my friend, a fellow student in my study abroad program, almost had her cell phone stolen in a restaurant. A homeless lady was coming around asking for money, and she tried to put her newspaper on my friend's phone, but I realized what was happening and grabbed the phone before she could take it. We were fortunate that we'd been warned about this common trick from our program directors, and for that, I'm thankful.
Oh, yeah. Mira, niña, cómo te lo digo. Camina, cada paso tuyo a mí me contamina. Mueve las caderas como gelatina, lindura divina. Te comería con...
By the end of my study abroad program, it was apparent to me that everything my high school Spanish teachers had tried to tell us was true. There was so much more to learning a world language than just the language itself. It was because of my time in Spain that I now know that it is paramount that I expose my students to the cultural differences of various countries around the world. It is so important to create global citizens who are multicultural. The culture that we know so well here in the United States of America is not the only one out there. And I believe that this is especially important since every day the world becomes more and more interconnected. If I can influence my students to appreciate and understand other cultures, then I know that I did my job well at the end of the day. Although I was crazy nervous at the beginning of the semester, the 6 months that I spent in Spain flew by incredibly fast. As it turned out, the experience not only solidified my love of Spanish, but also changed the way I view the world around me. For the first time in my life, I was the outsider nearly everywhere I went. Furthermore, my time in Spain influenced my professional path to becoming a Spanish teacher, and not just because it pushed me to a new level of fluency. My time in Spain taught me that it is essential to teach world cultures as well as languages. And that's the short version of how I came to be where I am now, en route to becoming a certified Spanish teacher. So I guess I listened to what Levi Lowery told me that first day of my journey to Spain. I picked up my courage and I flew. Gracias por escuchándome. Hasta la próxima y un saludo.
4 angelitos que me acompañan, 4 secretos, miles de historias, sueños que giran de luna a noria, de norte a sur y de este a oeste, que de media vuelta que se moleste. Deseenme mucha suerte, este amor loco puede ser mi muerte. Camina, cada paso tuyo a mí me contamina. Mueve las caderas como gelatina, lindura divina. Te comería con pan y mantequilla.